Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Erin Glenn and this is the Sassy Lass Craft Room. Welcome back if you've been here before, and if this is your first time, I'm glad you're here. We are working on last minute Halloween decor, and let's go ahead and get into it. My first project is a skull riser.
Okay, so materials. So I have a little round, I guess it's an ornament from Dollar General. It was $1. And then I bought one of those packs of those little skulls from the Dollar Tree, so $1.25. I do have to fill in that hole. I don't have wood filler. I just have the spackle that I got from Dollar General. And so I put quite a bit in there to try and get it, filled up. And then, went back through and sanded it. And I'm still filling that. I'm not really sure why I left that much of that in there because I think you got the idea already. All right. So, my original plan was to completely paint these silver. Like I wanted them to just be solid silver. Well, then I started putting this first coat on there and it's kind of, translucent. And I thought it actually looked kind of cool. I don't know, it made the skulls a little creepier, little aged and eerie or something. So I ended up leaving it at just the one coat. I did the front of them. I let them dry, flipped it over, did the back, let them dry. And then I decided I also was going to do this silver. And I'm kind of glad I didn't have any silver spray paint because I would have just, glued it all together and then spray painted the whole thing silver. But I think this ended out looking much cooler. So I painted the round black. And I just did one coat on the top and bottom. But I did end up doing two, I believe, on the edges just because, they weren't as smooth and even. So, I really had to press in there in some spots to get full coverage. So I did end up doing two. I was impatient this time, so I hit it with the heat tool to make things go a bit faster. Okay, so once each section was dry, then I, went on to the next section, hit it with the heat tool again, and did do a second coat around the edges. And you got a quick glimpse there just a second ago of you could see where the spackle was. Even, painting over it, you can always still kind of tell. For this kind of project, it doesn't really matter that much because, there's going to be a candle over it. And it's, two-sided. I can just choose the prettier side, even though both are going to kind of show. But just keep that in mind when you are doing a project that, generally speaking, you can still kind of tell where the spackle or wood filler or wood glue, any of those things are. So there's this up close of my skull. And like I said, I just really think that the one coat of the silver was just perfect. There, I was just sharing a quick idea. Not what I'm doing, so I didn't do it. But I thought, different heights of real thin candle holders, putting the skulls on top of those would make a really cool display. So the plain black was just not quite doing it for me. I wanted to, the skulls kind of look old and creepy and tarnished and stuff. And so I wanted it to have that too, not just, fresh black paint. So I used my finger and just kind of went over the sides and the top. Didn't worry about the bottom. You're not really going to see it. Just kind of smeared basically some silver paint on there. And since it is kind of thin, it worked out pretty well. Originally, and I say that a lot in this video. Actually, I say that a lot in a lot of videos. I do change my ideas as I go. And that's the good thing about DIY is, you can make things how you want them and you don't even really have to stick to your original plan. So, I originally was going to use super glue to glue those together. Generally speaking, I just prefer super glue to hot glue. But sometimes hot glue really is just the better choice, and this was one of those instances. So I glued my 4 skulls together in a circle or square, however you want to look at it, with their faces, facing outward, obviously. I gave the wood round, just kind of a quick sand Honestly, it really didn't do a whole lot, but you know, just wanted to add to that tarnished look, I guess. So then the highest points of the skulls, I gave a glob of hot glue and then centered it best I could onto the bottom of the wood round, and then flipped it over and pressed it down. Some of the skulls still ended out laying there a little wonky, but I still think it looks really cool. You got a nice up close there of the skulls. I really do think that only doing one layer of that silver paint was the best decision. It just makes the eyes and the mouth look extra creepy. I think it was perfect. I really, really like how this turned out, and I can't believe how simple and inexpensive it was. I picked these chalkboard cauldrons up at Dirt Cheap. So originally they were $3. I think I paid $1.80 for each of them. They were a little bit rough though, so I had to spruce them up a little bit before I could use them. So I'm really just kind of repeating what's already there. So I'm using Waverly chalk paint in pumpkin. It's an ever so slightly different color, and you can see it there. The one on the left was the painted one, so it's just very, very slightly different. And then on the top, I am going to go over that with just black chalkboard paint. So like I said, I'm just repeating what's there. Was just to smooth everything out and cover up the little bumps and bruises and scrapes that the poor little cauldrons had. I think they must have had a rough time in transit or something, and that's probably why they ended out at Dirt Cheap. I did go ahead and paint the backside as well. The backside, you know what you saw when I took off the sticker, it was not painted, but I went ahead and painted the backside with the chalkboard paint so that I could use both sides. My original plan was that I was going to put Boo. I was just going to cut out some white vinyl and do Boo. B on one and then O on the other two. And then for some reason, I don't know why, I decided that I would paint it myself. Like I would just freehand it. And that didn't go well. So, and so just really quickly, I'm just kind of going through and touching it up. So what I did was I would paint basically the top like 3/4 of it, let it dry, and then flip it over and do the other side. And that was just so that I wasn't setting it down in any wet paint. And then kind of the same thing for the chalkboard part. I would paint, and I only did one coat of the chalkboard. I would, paint one side, let that dry, flip it over, and paint the other. And I was just very, very, very careful when I painted the chalkboard part. So here's what I'm talking about. Like it's not terrible, but it's not great. So I did go ahead and cut out the Boo and vinyl, and then, again, my plan was I was just going to paint right back on over that and put my Boo on there. And then I had this idea for the other side. I was going to do a blank days until All Hallows Eve. And I just really like the term All Hallows Eve, so that's why I chose to use that there, and it fit. Halloween just wasn't going to fit very well. So, I've got my number on there and some spider webs. And then the next time I went to Dirt Cheap, I found this cute little guy, and I put the Boo on that. Both are super cute and super easy. Alrighty, so here is my version of the Man in the Moon. So basically for the face, what I did was looked at vintage Man in the Moon images or Halloween moon images that were vintage, and I just kind of combined the features that I liked of those. So, like the eyes and nose are kind of cutesy, the mouth is more, so it's kind of cutesy creepy. Yeah. But that's kind of what I was going for. They all looked kind of primitive, kind of, I guess, and not exactly rustic. I guess primitive really is more the word. Anyway, So my hope, I didn't honestly think it was going to work that well, but my hope was that, I would draw the face on there in like Sharpie, and that after painting it, enough of it would still show through that I'd still have kind of a guide. But it didn't really work out for me all that well, but that's okay. All right, so I glued two 12-inch rounds together just to give them, more thickness and stability to make it more of a substantial piece. And I painted the back and the side solid white and flipped it on over after it was dry and painted the front white right over my face. And I added a little bit of black to that white paint I had in a container to make gray. And then with a round sponge, I just kind of splotched it all over. Kind of focusing a lot on the edges and then kind of going into the center to give it that moon look. And then I would go over it with white to kind of blend it in a little bit, soften the edges. And then I added a little bit more black to make a darker gray and went over some of that. And then again, went back in with that lighter gray and some white to kind of blend it in. And I just kept doing that until I was happy with the way that it looked. Now my face is not really showing through all that well anymore. In fact, it looks kind of creepy because it's just a mouth and an eye. So what little of my face is left in all its creepy glory with its partial teeth and part of an eye, wasn't really all that helpful, but it did help me a little bit. So what I decided to do instead of just freehanding it with paint was to kind of sketch it out with pencil first, which was probably a smart decision. And then I use this Master's Touch round brush. It's number 6 brush, I believe. And just some black paint. And I just did the best I could. I am not a painter. I'm not an artist. I know that these typically were kind of primitive looking and yeah. So, like I said, just doing the best that I can here. I did have to go over a good bit of it with smaller paintbrushes in a little bit. The round was a good idea. It worked very well for certain parts of it. I don't know. I don't know if I just don't get enough paint on my brush or it's the wrong brush. I don't know if there are any artists out there that could give me some suggestions for, making it look a little bit neater. I mean, I didn't want it too neat. I didn't want it too perfect, but a little more so than it ended out. So if you have any suggestions, what I could have done differently, then I am open to them. Just be gentle. Constructive criticism only, please. I'm like I said, not an artist. Did the best I could. I do ultimately am very happy with the way that it turned out. I think it is really, really cute. It's that perfect combination of cute, creepy that a lot of these vintage pieces often were. But I think it could have been neater maybe. Anyway, so I went through with a smaller brush and kind of touched things up. I kind of wish I hadn't quite as much on the nose because I think I liked the nose a little bit more before. But, well. So you see there, I am leaving, some white kind of in the eyes. And you'll see later it looks a little bit different. So what I ended up doing, my husband makes fun of me for saying ended out. So do you say ended out or ended up? I don't know. I usually say ended out, but my husband makes fun of me for it. And I have noticed that most people say ended up doing something. Anyway, there's my ramble for the moment. What I ended up doing is I filled in the eyes completely black right there. So I just painted over those little circles. And then I went over it with some white paint to, I guess, give it more of a sparkle. And I do have that black smudge up there that, I do go through and fix that. And there are a couple of other areas that I went through and touched up a little bit later with some of my gray paint. Under the left eye there, I do that. There's some under the mouth that I go back through and touch up a little bit. I then went through with my gray paint and a very, very dry brush and just kind of splotched it over certain areas around the sides and then over some of the black to just kind of soften that harsh black and give it more of an aged look. I also gave him some rosy cheeks with some oxide ink and a blending brush, and I think the rosy cheeks made a big difference. Overall, for my first attempt, I really do think he is adorable, and I am proud of him, and I will display him.
Well, that is it for today. I hope that you enjoyed them and that they inspired you to create something on your own. If you enjoyed, go ahead and hit that like button and share with anyone that you think might be interested. If you are not already a subscriber, I would love it if you would consider becoming one. And don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Thank you very much for being here with me today. Don't forget to check out my link tree so you can see where else you can find me. And I hope to see you again next time.